Maria Elena Reyes, a 54-year-old widowed nurse from Cebu, Philippines, had spent most of her life taking care of others. After her husband's death and her children's migration abroad, loneliness filled her quiet home. Searching for connection, she joined online groups where Filipino women often met foreign men promising marriage and stability. It was there that she met Sheikh Khalid, a supposed Dubai businessman who claimed to be a widower himself. Their conversations began with kindness and cultural curiosity, but soon deepened into daily exchanges of affection, dreams, and promises of a new life together in Dubai. Over several months, Maria became emotionally attached. Khalid sent photos of luxury cars and a lavish home, telling her she would soon be its mistress. He convinced her that he needed her to come to Dubai for a private marriage ceremony before an official wedding. When Maria expressed hesitation, he reassured her with devotion and religious sincerity. Trusting his words, she sold her small property and borrowed money from relatives to pay for the visa processing, medical clearance, and travel insurance Khalid claimed were necessary. Each transaction seemed to bring her closer to happiness. In late July, Maria boarded her first international flight, believing she was leaving for love. On arrival, she was met by a man claiming to be Khalid's assistant, who took her phone and passport for security. She was brought to a suburban villa where she was told Khalid was away on business. Days passed without meeting him. The tone of her stay shifted, calls were restricted, and other women appeared in the house, equally anxious and confused. They shared similar stories. All had been promised marriage by different wealthy men who never materialized. Maria realized too late that she had fallen victim to an organized romance scam. Her messages to family became sporadic, ending abruptly with one final text saying, "Don't worry, I'm fine." 2 weeks later, her daughter reported her missing to Philippine authorities. A woman's body was later discovered in an industrial area outside Sharjah, identified through DNA as Maria. The cause of death was blunt force trauma. The investigation revealed an international scam network run by multiple men posing as Arab suitors targeting older women from Southeast Asia. They manipulated victims emotionally, extorted money, and used them for illegal activities before discarding them. Several suspects were arrested, but the man calling himself Sheikh Khalid vanished, leaving behind only digital traces. Maria's death sparked outrage in both the Philippines and the UAE. Her daughter began an online awareness campaign urging women to verify online relationships and report suspicious contacts. The story became a cautionary tale about love scams, trust, and vulnerability in the digital age. Maria's dream of companionship ended in tragedy, but her story exposed a pattern of exploitation affecting thousands. In the end, her life became a stark reminder that behind every romantic promise online, there can be a deadly deception waiting in the shadows. Maria Elena Reyes was 54 years old when her story began, a quiet widow living in the provincial city of Cebu. Her husband, a jeepney driver, had passed away nearly a decade earlier, and since then life had settled into a rhythm of repetition and solitude. Her 2 grown children worked overseas, one in Canada, the other in the Middle East, sending money occasionally, calling when they could. The small concrete house she had once shared with her family now felt hollow. Each evening, as the city dimmed and the roosters fell silent, Maria would scroll through her phone, seeking comfort in digital companionship. She had joined several Facebook groups for overseas Filipino workers, communities where people shared homesickness, jokes, and sometimes romance. It was there, buried among endless friend requests and messages, that she first saw a name that caught her attention, Sheikh Khalid bin Zayed. His profile looked impressive. Photos of a man in his 50s wearing crisp white kanjaras, posing beside luxury cars, feeding horses, and standing in front of an opulent mansion bathed in golden desert light. His messages were polite and carefully worded. "Good evening, my dear Maria," one of his first messages read. "You have a kind face, warm and full of peace. I feel like I've known you from another life." At first, Maria ignored him. She had grown used to strange men sending empty flattery. But there was something different about this one, the way he spoke of faith, destiny, and respect. He said he was a widower, mourning a wife lost to illness. He claimed to be looking not for youth or beauty, but loyalty. Maria, a deeply religious woman, found herself drawn to his tone of reverence. He spoke of daily prayers, honesty, and the value of a faithful partner, ideals she cherished. Their exchanges soon became regular. He asked about her life, her dreams, her family. She told him about her late husband, about the years she spent as a nurse, and about how loneliness clung to her even in a crowd. Weeks passed, and the conversations grew warmer, softer. What began as cautious politeness evolved into nightly talks that stretched for hours. They shared prayers before bed, traded photos of meals, and began to use words like love and forever. Khalid called her his queen. Maria, at first embarrassed, began to respond with shy affection. She saved screenshots of his messages and read them over in the mornings. For the first time in years, she felt alive. He told her he admired Filipino women for their faith and kindness. He said he wanted a wife who could guide him spiritually, who would bring warmth to his home. Slowly, he began weaving a fantasy, a life of luxury and belonging. He told her about his mansion in Dubai, his horses, and his 2 grown sons studying abroad. He sent her pictures of roses, sunsets over the Persian Gulf, and a gold bracelet he claimed to have bought for her. One morning, a small parcel arrived at her door. Inside was a bottle of perfume and a note that read, "For my future wife who already owns my heart." Her neighbors teased her gently when she mentioned her sheikh. She laughed it off, but inside she believed she had finally found someone who saw her not as an aging widow, but as a woman still worthy of love. Over time, Khalid's tone became more intimate. He began calling her Habibti, my love, and insisted that they were destined to be together. "God sent you to me," he said in one message. "I will marry you before this year ends. Dubai will be your new home." Maria, flattered and overwhelmed, started to imagine the life he described. Quiet mornings in a marble villa, evenings under desert skies, and the feeling of being cherished again. She began signing her messages as Mrs. Khalid in jest, though part of her wished it would come true. He began asking her small, personal questions that built emotional dependency. Did she trust him completely? Would she leave the Philippines for love? Each time she said yes. He reinforced the fantasy, telling her stories of other couples who met online and found lifelong happiness. When he mentioned that he wanted to marry her soon, Maria was hesitant. She had never met him in person, but he reassured her that their bond was spiritual, that God had already joined them as husband and wife. His charm disarmed her doubts. She told her friends that she was finally planning to remarry. He spoke about Dubai like a paradise, a place where loyalty was rewarded, where women of faith were treated with honor. "In my country," he wrote, "a woman like you is a treasure. I will never let anyone hurt you." Those words sealed her trust. In the months that followed, Maria's routine changed. She woke up early to check her messages, fell asleep to voice notes whispered in Arabic-accented English. She told her children only that she was talking to a good man. She was afraid they would judge her, afraid they would call it foolish. As the digital romance deepened, Khalid began to test her devotion subtly. He sent her screenshots of flight bookings, photos of documents, and wedding invitations written in Arabic script. He hinted that she would soon need to prepare for her journey. By then, Maria no longer doubted him. She believed love had finally given her a second chance. What she didn't know was that the man she called Habibi was never real, and that every word of tenderness was part of a script used to lure her toward a nightmare waiting on the other side of the world. As the months passed, Khalid's words became more insistent and his promises more elaborate. He began to speak about marriage not as a distant dream, but as something imminent, a destiny already written. "My family expects me to remarry before the year ends," he told Maria one evening. "You are the only woman I can imagine standing beside me. I want to do it quietly first, just us before the public ceremony. Dubai has its own traditions, my love." Maria's heart leapt. The idea of marrying in Dubai in a private ceremony surrounded by luxury felt surreal. Still, she hesitated. She had never met him, never heard his voice in person, only through the filtered softness of video calls and messages. But the way he spoke, gentle, composed, full of faith, made her believe. When she voiced her concern, he reassured her with the confidence of a man who always seemed in control. "I have already arranged everything," he said. "You will come here as my fiancé. All the papers are ready. My assistant will send them." Within a week, an email arrived from an address that looked official, ending with Gov. AE. Attached were two documents: a marriage authorization certificate stamped with Arabic seals and a private invitation letter allegedly issued by a Dubai court. Both appeared legitimate formal language, signatures, and watermarks that looked authentic. The letter even carried Khalid's full name and title, Sheikh Khalid bin Zayed Al Maktoum, the same surname as one of Dubai's most powerful families. To Maria, that was proof enough. She didn't tell her children. They had been skeptical about Khalid from the beginning, calling him too good to be true. Instead, she told her friends and relatives that she had been offered a temporary nursing position in Dubai, a story that seemed plausible and respectable. She would go alone, get settled, and then send for her family later. Deep inside, she carried the thrill of a secret, the belief that she was finally about to begin the next chapter of her life. Then came the requests. Khalid's assistant, a man named Rashid, contacted her on WhatsApp. His messages were polite but businesslike. He told her that in order to process her fiancé visa and secure private accommodations, certain fees were required. "You must complete the documentation under his name," Rashid explained. "We need a clearance certificate and embassy verification. It is a small matter, just formalities." The first payment request was $3,000. Maria hesitated, but Khalid soothed her doubts. "My love," he said, "this is simply procedure. You will be reimbursed once you arrive. You are my wife now. What is mine is yours." The words melted her resistance. She wired the money through a remittance center the next morning. Weeks later came another message. A minor issue had appeared. The certificate needed validation from the Ministry of Interior. Another $5,000. She sold her jewelry and borrowed from her cousin, assuring everyone it was for travel expenses. Then came the biggest request, $10,000 to finalize her accommodation and marriage documentation. "Once this is done," Khalid promised, "I will send the plane ticket myself." By now, Maria's world revolved around him. Every payment brought her a strange sense of closeness, as if she were buying her way into the life he promised. She often whispered prayers before each transfer, convinced she was investing in love, not losing her savings. When doubts surfaced, Khalid's timing was impeccable. He would send another bouquet photo, another message of devotion. "You are already my wife in the eyes of God." Finally, after 6 months of long-distance love, Khalid told her the preparations were complete. "Your visa is ready," he said. "My driver will meet you at Dubai airport. Everything will be perfect." He sent her an electronic ticket with Emirates Airlines, and for the first time, Maria saw her dream turning real. She told her neighbors she was going abroad for work. Only her closest friend knew the truth, that she was going to marry a man she had never met in person. "Pray for me," she said with a smile. "If this is real, my life will finally change." The day before her flight, Khalid called her for the first time in weeks. His voice was calm, affectionate, and reassuring. "Do not be afraid, my love. Everything is prepared for you. Once you land, my assistant will bring you home. You will finally see me, and we will begin our new life." Maria packed 2 suitcases, one with her clothes and wedding dress, the other with small gifts for her future husband. She included a rosary and a Bible, saying she wanted to bless their union. Her heart was full of gratitude and faith. For the first time in years, she dared to believe she was loved. When she boarded her flight at Mactan, Cebu International Airport, she sent Khalid a photo from her seat, smiling nervously with the caption, "I'm coming home to you." He replied with a heart emoji and one final voice note, "Welcome to your destiny, my queen." 14 hours later, Maria landed in Dubai. The airport dazzled her: marble floors, endless lights, and luxury everywhere. She felt small but hopeful. At the arrival's gate, she was approached by a man holding a sign that read Mrs. Khalid. He introduced himself as Rashid, Khalid's personal driver. He took her luggage, her phone, and her passport, saying they needed to be kept safe for registration. She followed him out of the terminal, smiling nervously, expecting to meet her fiancé soon. They drove away from the city, past the glittering towers and into the quiet suburbs. The car stopped outside a gated villa surrounded by high walls. Rashid told her Khalid was traveling to Oman on urgent business but would return soon. She was to stay here and rest until then. Inside, she noticed another woman sitting silently in the living room, Filipina, maybe in her 30s. Their eyes met briefly, but no words were exchanged. Something in that woman's gaze felt heavy, almost frightened. Maria's excitement flickered, replaced by unease. She told herself it was temporary, that Khalid would come soon, that everything was still part of the dream. But deep down, as the door locked behind her, a strange feeling began to grow, a cold understanding that perhaps she had already gone too far. The fairy tale she had followed halfway across the world was starting to unravel, and Maria Reyes was about to learn that in the pursuit of love, she had walked straight into a trap designed not for marriage, but for manipulation and something far darker waiting in the days ahead. When Maria first arrived at the villa, she was too overwhelmed to notice the subtle signs of danger. Rashid, the man who met her at the airport, had spoken politely and even offered her a meal when they arrived. He assured her that Khalid would return soon, that her future husband was finalizing business abroad. The house was quiet, tastefully furnished, and smelled faintly of incense. For a while, Maria convinced herself that she was simply being impatient. In the first 2 days, she was treated with courtesy. Rashid brought her meals and encouraged her to rest, saying that the sheikh would not want his future bride exhausted. Khalid sent her affectionate messages from afar, photos of documents, plane tickets, and screenshots of business meetings. His messages always ended with the same line: "You're home now, my queen, trust me." But by the 4th day, things began to feel different. Her phone, which had been taken for registration purposes, was not returned. When she asked about it, Rashid smiled and said, "It's safer with us. Sheikh doesn't want his wife to be disturbed by spam calls." Her passport, too, remained missing. She had surrendered it at the airport, believing it was standard immigration procedure. She was moved to a smaller room with barred windows and told that security reasons required the door to remain locked at night. Still, the messages from Khalid continued, sometimes long voice notes of affection, other times brief instructions that she must obey Rashid and not question the process. "You must be patient, my love," one message said. "This is how things are done here. I will come to you soon." On the 6th day, Rashid told her that Khalid's family wanted a short video message from her, a token of love to show their approval. He handed her a phone and instructed her to record herself saying that she was happy, loved, and excited to marry the sheikh. Nervously, she did as asked, repeating the words Rashid whispered behind the camera. He made her say that she had come willingly, that she was treated well, and that she trusted her husband to be completely. When it was over, he smiled, patted her hand, and said she had made Khalid proud. But Maria couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The house was too quiet. She rarely saw other people, yet at night she heard footsteps, whispers in unfamiliar languages, and the sound of doors opening and closing somewhere beyond her room. Once, through a narrow window, she saw 2 women being led out of a van into the villa next door. Both looked frightened, clutching small bags. On the 7th day, while Rashid was away, she ventured toward the kitchen to get water. There she heard voices, not Arabic but Tagalog. Her heart pounded. She quietly called out, "Cabian?" A voice answered softly from behind a half-closed door. 2 women emerged, both Filipino, both visibly nervous. One of them, a woman in her 30s named Lorna, pulled Maria aside and whispered, "You're new. Don't ask too many questions. Just stay quiet." That night, Lorna found a way to speak to her privately. Her story was hauntingly similar. She too had met a man online claiming to be a sheikh, promising marriage and wealth. She had arrived months earlier only to find herself trapped. "None of us ever met him," Lorna said. "There is no Khalid. They use fake names, fake photos. They keep us here and take everything, our money, our identity." Maria's world tilted. Everything she had believed, the messages, the gifts, the love, collapsed in that moment. Her knees trembled as she whispered, "But I spoke to him. I saw him on video." Lorna shook her head. "They use recordings from other people. There are many of them. It's a group. They pretend to be rich men, trick women like us, and use us for scams. You're not the first, Maria, and you won't be the last." In the days that followed, Maria began to notice the full extent of her captivity. There were at least 6 women in the house, from the Philippines, Indonesia, and Sri Lanka. Some had been there for weeks, others for months. Their phones had been confiscated, their families had stopped hearing from them, and they lived under the constant watch of Rashid and two other men. They were forced to make video calls pretending to live happily with their husbands, which were then used to extract money from other victims online. Some women were made to open bank accounts or pose for documents. The promise of love had turned into forced participation in fraud. Maria tried to stay calm, praying silently each night, but fear began to overtake her. She knew her daughter would be waiting for her messages. She imagined her children's confusion when she didn't respond. The guilt gnawed at her. One night she asked Lorna if there was any way out. Lorna said a few women had escaped in the past, but none were ever found again. Desperation pushed Maria to act. Using a cleaning cloth, she managed to lift a loose ceiling panel in her room and discovered a gap that led to a storage area. There, hidden among discarded boxes, she found an old phone. One of the victims must have left it behind. Its screen was cracked and the SIM card missing, but the Wi-Fi was still connected. Trembling, Maria logged into her Facebook account and sent a message to her daughter in Canada. "Something is wrong. I can't leave this house." She didn't know that her message would trigger a frantic search halfway across the world and alert the very people holding her captive. Within hours, Rashid entered her room in silence, holding the phone she had used. His expression was no longer polite. "Who gave you this?" he demanded. Maria pleaded that she was only trying to contact Khalid, but the slap that followed told her the truth. There was no Khalid. There never was. That night she was moved to a different room. The other women didn't see her again. Some said they heard shouting. Others said they heard a door slam and a vehicle leave in the early morning hours. For Maria Reyes, what began as a journey for love had turned into imprisonment under a criminal enterprise that preyed on trust, hope, and loneliness. The dream of being cherished had become her undoing. And as the villa doors closed for the last time behind her, the line between romance and exploitation had vanished completely. Maria's last days inside the villa unfolded like a slow collapse into silence. After she was caught using the hidden phone, the fragile courtesy that once defined her captivity vanished completely. The men no longer smiled or spoke politely. They treated her with suspicion, as though she had broken an unspoken rule of obedience. Rashid's face had hardened, his voice now sharp and cold. The small freedoms she once had, walking to the kitchen, speaking to the other women, praying aloud, were all taken from her. Lorna and the others whispered about what might happen next. Every woman who had tried to contact the outside world had simply disappeared. No one was ever sure if they were moved to another house, deported, or worse. Maria tried to stay calm, telling herself that God was watching and that her daughter would somehow find her. Each night she prayed silently, tracing the sign of the cross under her blanket, whispering the same plea, "Please let them find me." Meanwhile, thousands of kilometers away in Toronto, her daughter Angela was growing frantic. The last message she had received from her mother had come 2 days earlier. "Something is wrong. I can't leave this house." When Angela tried to call, the number was disconnected. Then, hours later, she received one final text. "Don't worry, I'm fine. Khalid just wants me to rest." Angela knew immediately that something was off. Her mother's messages were always long, filled with emojis and warmth. This one was flat, mechanical, the kind of tone her mother never used. She tried again and again to reach her, sending voice notes, emails, and messages to Khalid's Facebook account. None were read. When 24 hours passed without a response, she contacted her relatives in Cebu, and together they reported Maria missing to the Philippine Department of Foreign Affairs. Within days, the Philippine consulate in Dubai was alerted. Officials began cross-checking arrival records and discovered that Maria had indeed entered the UAE on a tourist visa 2 weeks earlier. But beyond her entry, there was no trace of her. She hadn't checked into any hotel, nor had her visa sponsor been verified. The assistant listed on her travel documents had provided a fake address and a disconnected phone number. Interpol and local authorities were notified, and an investigation began. The consulate posted her photo online, appealing for information. "Missing Filipina, Maria Elena Reyes, 54, last seen in Dubai on July 29. Other women came forward anonymously with eerily similar stories. online suitors, fake documents, and vanishing fiancés who had promised them love and luxury. A pattern began to form, revealing an organized web of deception targeting lonely, middle-aged women across Southeast Asia. Back in the villa, the women knew something terrible had happened. They noticed new locks installed on the doors, tighter surveillance, and hushed conversations between the men. Lorna said Maria was taken out one night after a heated argument. She had begged to be released, promising she would tell no one, but Rashid's reply was chilling. "You already told someone." That was the last time anyone saw her alive. 2 weeks later, on the outskirts of Sharjah, workers at an industrial construction site discovered a suitcase abandoned in a sand pit. Inside were blood-stained clothing, a woman's handbag, and identification papers in the name of Maria Reyes. The body found nearby was badly decomposed, wrapped in plastic and hidden beneath rubble. The discovery made local headlines. Unidentified female body found near industrial zone. It would take several days before the Philippine consulate was contacted. When Angela was informed, she flew to Dubai immediately, clinging to the hope that it wasn't her mother. But the DNA test confirmed what she feared most. The remains belonged to Maria Elena Reyes. The autopsy revealed blunt force trauma to the head with multiple contusions suggesting a violent assault. There were no signs of theft. Her jewelry was still with her. Her phone, however, was missing. The authorities quietly connected the case to an ongoing investigation into romance scams operating across the Gulf region. Several villas under different names were raided, revealing networks of forged documents, fake passports, and dozens of photographs of women, many of whom had also vanished. The men behind the operations used social media profiles to lure victims into sending money or traveling under false pretenses. Once the victims arrived, they were either exploited or disappeared. Though a few suspects were arrested, including Rashid, the man known as Khalid could not be found. The real identity behind the account turned out to be a composite of stolen images and multiple online aliases. Investigators traced hundreds of transactions linked to victims from the Philippines, Indonesia, and Thailand. In each case, the story was the same: promises of marriage, fake documents, and silence that ended in tragedy. Maria's family brought her remains back to Cebu 3 months later. Her homecoming was quiet and sorrowful. Neighbors lined the narrow street as the coffin was carried inside her small house. Angela spoke through tears during the funeral. "My mother believed in love. She believed that kindness still existed in this world, and they used that faith against her." The story spread quickly in Philippine media, sparking outrage and renewed calls for tighter monitoring of online romance scams. Government agencies warned women to be cautious, to verify profiles, to never send money or travel under the promise of love. But for Maria's family, those warnings came too late. In the end, her dream to find companionship after years of loneliness had led her into the hands of people who saw compassion as weakness and love as a weapon. The photographs she once shared online, her messages filled with affection, now stood as digital evidence of her trust that was betrayed at every turn. The official report concluded that Maria's death was the result of organized exploitation and fraud. The case remains open, though no primary suspect has ever been convicted. For Angela, closure remains an illusion. What she holds onto instead is her mother's story, a story that now serves as a warning to thousands of others still waiting for someone to message them with promises of love. The discovery of Maria Elena Reyes' body marked the beginning of an international investigation that would expose one of the most elaborate romance scam syndicates operating across the Middle East. What began as a missing persons case soon evolved into a cross-border operation involving the UE authorities, Interpol, and the Philippine consulate. Detectives pieced together the fragments of her life through digital footprints, Facebook messages, remittance records, flight logs, and online aliases. The Sheikh Khalid, who had promised Maria a life of love and luxury, did not exist. His profile picture was traced to a retired businessman in Qatar who had no knowledge of the scam. The emails, bank transfers, and WhatsApp messages were all linked to an underground network that had been active for years. preying on vulnerable women across Asia and the Gulf. Through digital forensics, investigators uncovered that the group was operated by a syndicate of Nigerian and local nationals who created multiple fake identities to impersonate wealthy Arab men. They used social media and dating platforms to find victims, often widows, caregivers, or domestic workers from the Philippines, Indonesia, and Sri Lanka. Once emotional trust was established, the victims were lured into sending money for visa processing or marriage certificates. A select few, like Maria, were convinced to travel in person, and those cases often ended in disappearance. Police raids conducted in Sharjah and Ajman led to the arrest of several individuals found in possession of dozens of fake passports, marriage documents, and SIM cards registered under false names. Inside one confiscated laptop were folders labeled with women's names, each containing pictures, voice recordings, and correspondence. Among them was a folder titled Maria R., containing her photos, passport copy, and voice messages she had sent months before her death. News of the arrests spread quickly across both the UAE and the Philippines. Headlines read, "Romance scam ring exploits domestic workers and widows across Asia." The case caught public attention not only for its cruelty, but also because it reflected the hidden vulnerability of thousands of migrant women who had left home searching for security or affection, only to be manipulated and discarded. Maria's daughter, Angela, became a central voice in the media coverage. Standing before reporters, she said through tears, "My mother believed in love. She believed people could be kind, and that belief killed her." Her words resonated with many families who had lost relatives to similar scams. Social media in the Philippines was flooded with messages of sympathy and outrage. Several overseas Filipino worker, OFW, Facebook groups began circulating warnings, posting lists of fake Sheikh profiles and encouraging women to verify any foreign suitor who promised quick marriage or travel. As the investigation deepened, Interpol's findings revealed that the network extended beyond the UAE, operating through bank accounts in Nigeria, Malaysia, and Singapore. The syndicate's operations were meticulously organized. One group handled the online courting and emotional manipulation, another managed the financial transactions, and a third oversaw the victims once they were lured to the Gulf. Maria's case became the centerpiece of the inquiry, serving as both evidence and symbol, a story that embodied the emotional and human cost behind online deception. Though several arrests were made, the man believed to be the syndicate's ringleader, the person behind the alias Sheikh Khalid, disappeared before authorities could locate him. Some investigators believed he fled the country, others suspected he had been using multiple identities and may still have been active online under a different name. Despite international coordination, the case eventually slowed, weighed down by jurisdictional limits and a lack of formal extradition agreements. For Maria's family, justice remained incomplete. The Philippine government issued a statement condemning the exploitation of overseas workers and pledging stronger digital awareness campaigns to protect women from romance scams. Seminars were launched in several provinces, teaching families how to identify online fraud and report suspicious activity. In Cebu, Maria's story was retold in churches and community centers. Her name became a symbol of caution and compassion, the story of a woman who wanted nothing more than companionship, but found herself caught in a system that weaponized trust. Journalists revisited her Facebook posts and old photos, reconstructing her timeline. The most haunting image circulated online was one of her smiling in an airport selfie, suitcase beside her, moments before she boarded her flight to Dubai. The caption read simply, "Starting my new life." Her story sparked not only grief but also awareness. Across Filipino communities abroad, women began sharing their own near misses, messages from men claiming to be engineers, doctors, or sheiks offering love and visas. Maria's case gave them the courage to speak out. The official report concluded that she had been a victim of transnational human exploitation and digital fraud. While her death brought to light the magnitude of online emotional crime, it also revealed how easy it was for loneliness to be turned into leverage. In the end, the law caught some of the perpetrators, but the true architect of her deception remained free. The system had exposed the scam, but it could not bring back what Maria had lost: her hope, her dignity, her life. Maria's story wasn't just about a woman who fell for the wrong man. It was about thousands like her, women who believe in love so deeply that they ignore the danger hidden behind every message, every promise, and every dream that begins with the words, "Trust me."